pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I will call this Board of Moffett County Commissioners regular meeting to order on February 24th, 2026. Chair would move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
And Chair would move to approve the consent agenda items A through J.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So that brings us to public comment. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to share your thoughts with the commissioners this morning, come up and state your name. We'll give you 3 minutes to share your thoughts this morning. Okay, we'll go into general discussion. I only have a couple of things, well, 2 folks to recognize this morning. February anniversary dates, Allison Smith with the Senior Center or the Senior Housing at 25 years of service, and Sherrod Schonert at the Sheriff's Office, 10 years of service, February. And quite a few more working to catch up on that 10-year. Either of you have anything for general discussion this morning?
Nothing on me.
All right, then we'll move on to staff reports. And we will host Zane Kessler and Andy Mueller with Colorado River District for an annual program update. Good morning. Perfect timing. Yeah, come on up.
Grace.
Tom, do you want to?
Tom, do you need to join them? You can drag it.
Well, someone's got to kick me in the shins, Tom.
Good morning.
Good morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
Zane
I think
Kessler.
you're up is.
Yeah. All right. Apologies.
Okay.
Thanks for having us. Zane Kessler, Director of Government Relations for the Colorado River District, joined by Andy Mueller, our General Manager. We've got some specific topics we want to discuss with you today, but just to kind of lead us off, this is part of my annual goals to get out to each of the 15 boards of county commissioners within the River District territory. You see me typically once a year. I like to use these meetings as an opportunity to cover, those priorities that we're working on and spending our staff and resources to focus in on. But also, I don't want to lose sight of the importance of a conversation with you as the commissioners and to hear from you, what's on your radar? What can we be doing better to represent our shared constituents in Moffett County? And so to the extent that you have questions or things, if you want to drive the conversation, we're all ears. But we do have a handful of I think, timely topics that we wanted to jump into with you. So I'll leave that there and ask Andy if he has anything to.
I guess I would just say I really appreciate your partnership and willingness to have us come visit. We are looking for a dialogue. We would love to understand your priorities and make sure that we're in touch and in tune with the Moffett County community and providing the service that we need to be providing. And we take that very seriously at the River District. We know that we work for our taxpayers and really want to make sure that we're bringing value back to the county. And so if there are things we can do better or new efforts, then we'd like to hear that, make sure that we understand that, and would appreciate it. So, but maybe if we can start on a few things that we are engaged in, just so you understand what we're thinking is talk about some of the work we're doing on a more local level, bring that into some of the at least one of the big projects we're working on at the district, and then talk more about the big Colorado River issues, the interstate negotiations, and their likely and potential impacts on where we are today and what may happen here in Western Colorado as a result of what's going on. Know that you have teed up for discussion after us a letter to the, I should say, the Commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation, the Department of Interior on some of that issue. So I think we want to lead into that discussion if we can. So first, I guess I want to just touch on our Community Funding Partnership Program, which is it's a grant program, but it's also a technical assistance program and viewed as a partnership with our local water users and communities. We were able to stand that up as a result of a ballot question back in 2020, and that allowed us to fund this effort. We committed at the time to fund $4.2 million a year into a fund that would provide these grants and assistance to our water users. Help modernize infrastructure, help maintain watersheds and productive ag and healthy rivers. I will say that our board has been able to put far more than 4.2 million a year. We put about 7 million a year to 8 million a year into that fund. So we're doing our best to deal with short-term, smaller projects, but also be able to be in a position to do major efforts throughout our basin. And so it's a balance of funding. But we have to date committed just over $32 million in funding. And what is probably remarkably successful is that we've also leveraged and brought in over $98 million of outside funding into the district with that investment of the 32. So it's a 3-to-1 return on our local investment, which has really been exciting because we're driving West Slope water priorities instead of having the state or the feds tell us what to do. We're saying these are projects we want, our communities need, and here's our matching funds. Now bring in the money. And so it's been a real success story that way, and we're very excited about it. Here in Moffat County, we've sponsored, I think, about 16 projects, and we have committed about 1.6 million at this point, including the Maybell Canal and a number of other projects. But I do want to mention that the one that I think I like the most is kind of a collaborative effort by a number of groups, but it's the Yampa River Flow collaborative effort, trying to keep the call off. From our perspective, the reason we're involved is to keep the call off the lower Yampa so that ranchers and farmers can continue to stay in priority and pump water during these dry, hot summers. It's real important to us to have the family farmers and ranchers be able to do that. And so it's we've started by donating the water out of our enterprise to try to get that going. And then since then have, with the help of the Yampa River Fund that Tom sits on, as well as others, we've been able to get partners to help us provide that water out of Elkhead. And I think it's a really a great example of how a community can help protect itself with water resources. And so that's been helpful. Anything else on the CFP, Zane?
Just, recognizing the support from Moffat County voters for the creation of that program. I think I've been here multiple times to talk to you all about that. That's something we're very proud of. We live in divided times, and water can be a divisive issue, but I think the ballot measure that led to the creation of the Community Funding Partnership is evidence that on the Western Slope, at least, water brings us together. Moffat, along with Mesa, along with Summit and Pitkin, every one of those counties supported that measure because I think largely we were able to make the case that it is in our collective interest on the Western Slope that we choose our own destiny. We can't wait for the state or the feds to do it for us. We need to start investing now to make sure that productive ag and a recreation economy and everything else has the resources it needs to move forward, especially in a multi-decadal drought that has only gotten worse since 2020. So,
yeah. And along those lines, one of the projects that we're funding through that and that we're working on is to protect, as you know, protect the main stem of the Colorado and actually have effects of protecting agriculture throughout Western Colorado, and that's the Shoshone Water Rights Preservation Campaign. Shoshone it's the power plant sitting in Glenwood Springs, or just outside of Glenwood Springs in the canyon there. Because of its age and the volume of water it commands, it limits the amount of water available for the Front Range Trans Mountain diversions. They're all junior to that Shoshone call, so they've had to design ways to make sure that that call is met. And by doing that, in these days before there's a compact curtailment, that has allowed that Shoshone power right has allowed the water to continue to flow on the main stem of the Colorado. It's provided huge benefits to our agricultural providers along the main stem. It's provided clean drinking water to a number of our small towns that pump directly out of the Colorado River. The water quality quickly diminishes if you take more water out of the headwaters. So it's a really critical water saving or water quality issue for those drinking water supplies. It's kept the endangered fish program viable because of that critical 15-mile reach right outside of Grand Junction. And because of that, it provides the incredible amount of base flows for that program. And if that water right goes away, the Front Range, free of charge and without any environmental permitting or any tunnels or any new reservoirs, just takes a whole lot more water east. And it will kill that endangered fish recovery program, which will have impacts on all of our diverters, all of our consumptive diverters on the western slope. So it's really critical from our perspective. It also, we have a $4 billion a year recreation economy on the Colorado River that supports a number of our towns and communities that also is important. And years like this right now, that flow, that Shoshone call will keep that recreation industry, both above it and below it, all the way down to Grand Junction, from Grand County to Grand Junction, keep it alive. And it's one of those things that we don't think much about why rivers flow, but that river's not flowing towards the money because we've got this power plant there. It's old. It's going to fall apart. It is falling apart. It isn't licensed by FERC. It's got, you name the issues. It's a very small amount of power, a lot of water. It doesn't make sense from Excel's portfolio to keep that running, and so we're looking at making sure we preserve it. There are benefits beyond that, and this gets into the interstate issues. There's a whole lot of unknowns about how, if we go into a compact curtailment, so if we start seeing all of our post-compact water rights curtailed by our state because of our collective upper basin obligation under the Colorado River Compact, the question is, what happens and how do those junior Trans Mountain diversions to the cities get their water? Well, they should all be turned off if the prior appropriation doctrine rules. It is they have a whole lot of horsepower, and they will get at least, our job would be to limit them to just their in-home use and their hospitals and their fire hydrants and those kind of things. They're going to be looking for a whole lot more water. They're going to be looking for their lawns and their golf courses and their data centers and their chip plants that they're building, and they're going to want to keep that water flowing eastward. And while we're not opposed to their economic development, we are opposed to it at the expense of the West Slope, because if they do that, if they take that water, what they will be able to do for the first time is to dry up farms anywhere on the West Slope and send that water in substitution down to Lake Powell and take it out at the headwaters of the Colorado. It's called an exchange. And right now our exchanges only allow us to do it within our state. These would be interstate exchanges because, like in the Yampa, it would go out, hit the green. If you think about it, those water molecules magically would then somehow be exchanged up the Colorado all the way to the headwaters. Well, if there's a senior water right standing in the middle of that, calling that water and preventing them from from diverting, then that would protect that during the driest parts of the year. It would protect all of our farms and ranches from being dried up in that respect to some degree. It's not a magic bullet. So, but it's an important issue for all of us to recognize. Why am I talking about a compact curtailment? Let me get into that real quickly, because we've never violated our obligations as an upper basin under that compact. And that leads to the 7-state negotiations. As I know you've read in the paper, as well as elsewhere, the 7 states have been trying to agree upon rules that govern the operation of Lake Powell and Lake Mead. It's not the compact they're negotiating, it's just those operational rules. And they're required, the federal government is required to have operational rules that coordinate the operation of those reservoirs. Or they're required to do that by an act of Congress that was passed in 1968. Okay. And that act says you got to come up with these rules. Well, the feds historically have said, we'd like to do that, but we want the 7 states to agree on the rules because it's a lot easier for us if everybody can reach an agreement. It's less likely that we, the federal government, are going to get sued. It just works better on the system if people can come to an agreement. So for the past 3 years or 4 years, the states have been meeting with amazing regularity. The demands on the river are so high, particularly in the lower basin. And the reservoirs have hit such a low level because the supply, right? There are really 2 reasons, right, driving this crisis. The supply is reduced. I mean, take a look at this year. You guys, you've been living through it. You understand, right? By the way, you understand the supply issues a lot better than anybody in Arizona or California or Nevada. I can just tell you that. Like they think it just magically shows up in their reservoirs, and so they want more water. They say, hey, you know, it doesn't matter about the supply, but their demands are growing too. And they'll say, oh no, they're not. And they've got this math that I swear to you, a first grader anywhere in the state of Colorado could prove their math wrong. But their math seems to sell both at the federal government level and in the press, right? And it's like, oh, they're doing all these wonderful things. Well, I just want to point out the demands that they put on the river. So they've got this system where they don't account for their evaporative loss off of Lake Mead and the other reservoirs they have down there, or the transit loss where they deliver water out of a reservoir and they bring it to the Imperial Irrigation District 230 miles away. There's no charge against them for the evaporative losses off of those systems. That sounds like maybe that's a small amount. No, that's 1.5 million acre feet a year that evaporates out of the system because of their use of that water. In the upper basin, we agreed in 1948 that the laws of physics apply and that we get charged for our share of the evaporation out of all the federal reservoirs in the upper basin. Colorado pays 51.75% of that. That's part of our consumptive use in our state. Down in the lower basin, they say, no, that's not it. Well, to put it into context, if over the last 25 years, they'd been charged for that, and therefore the releases out of Lake Mead had been reduced by that 1.5 million, we would be sitting right now with an extra 16.5 million acre feet of water in Mead and Powell, and we wouldn't be in a crisis, right? That's over half of the fill of one of those reservoirs, right? And so, yes, the supply is going down, but there's a math problem, and it's been caused by the lower basin. And what do they say? They say, well, you know, we're willing to save water. We're going to put that 1.5 million on the table, but we're only going to do it if you start drying up all your farms and ranches up in western Colorado. And they specifically call out western Colorado. The Central Arizona Project, the most junior right down there on the system, has issued these videos and these press releases just targeting Colorado agriculture, saying that we're wasting water and that it's our fault and that we're not willing to come to the table and we need to dry up our ag. Well, we're not the ones who built a mega city in the middle of the desert based upon an unsustainable junior water right? That's not, and so we've got this tension. Our state has been unable to reach an agreement, particularly with Arizona, right? They're the 2 outliers in the conversation, us and Arizona. The upper basin has stuck together, and they're great at doing that with Utah and Wyoming and New Mexico. But the reality is we blew by the deadlines in November that the Fed set. We blew by the February 14th deadline this month. And what does that mean? Well, there's still some time where those states could reach an agreement. But the reality is it's a federal decision and the Department of Interior will act, right? Secretary Burgum has to act and they will make a ruling. Well, this is all because it's a large federal action. There's a National Environmental Policy Act, a NEPA process going on. And under the NEPA process, they have to issue their draft environmental impact statement. And they have to analyze the alternatives for the different rules that might come about. Well, they did that, and about a month ago, they released 5 alternatives that they're studying. One of them completely fails because it's the default under it goes back to rules that were passed in the 70s, and it doesn't matter. The second one is the federal, they call it the basic coordination alternative, but it's federal powers. It's what the federal government thinks it has the ability to do without the agreement of the states. And that agreement, first and foremost, hammers Arizona because Arizona is a junior and the federal government has more authority in the lower basin than they have up here. So it hammers Arizona. So some of us in Colorado would say, well, that's just fine. But I would be cautious of that because that alternative also causes reductions of releases at Lake Powell that drops us very quickly below what the federal government, or excuse me, what the lower basin believes is our obligation under the compact, which they think it's 82.5 million acre feet over 10 years on a running 10-year average. We say, no, it's 75 million over 10. But we will drop below the 82.5 million this year under almost every scenario, okay, unless it starts just snowing feet and feet and feet. We're going to see that happen this year. What is that? That's a trigger for Supreme Court litigation. So instantly, California and Arizona say, we're going into the Supreme Court. We're not going to sit around and watch this happen, which means that we've given up our ability to create our own future through negotiations, and we're letting 9 justices, none of whom know very much about Western water law, decide our fate. Not to mention, those cases last a minimum of 10 years in front of the Supreme Court. And while they're pending, the question is, how do you get anybody to come invest in our communities? How do you get local businesses to make huge investments? How do you get new investments, as you're trying to do here? It throws into question every basic building block of our community to have that tied up in litigation. So we don't want that. The other thing it does, by the way, this basic coordination alternative, is it says, oh, by the way, if we have to take additional actions to protect our infrastructure at Lake Powell, protect the Glen Canyon Dam, we're going to take, and it literally says this, unspecified actions above Lake Powell. Well, what's above Lake Powell is the upper basin. It's us, it's you, it's all of, our communities. And so what are those actions? And we've asked the Bureau of Reclamation, our negotiators asked them, they say, well, we're not going to tell you. It's more than just releasing water out of Flaming Gorge, which has its own issues if you talk to T. Wright and others, and I understand those issues well. But it's more than that. It's going after federal reservoir releases, federal projects now. Here in the Yampa, maybe that's the first time you're happy that the feds never invested any money in water infrastructure like they did in some of the other basins in our state. But those issues are coming, and there's some pretty great uncertainty. And if there's one thing water planning shouldn't involve, it's uncertainty, right? Our job as water planners and policy folks is to eliminate the uncertainty, provide certainty for communities to grow and develop and thrive. So those 2 issues alone are real problematic. There are 3 other alternatives that have a range of things. They all require the cooperation of the states, which we don't have right now, right? We don't have that agreement. But there's one element in there that will potentially impact us. So those states continue to meet. I can tell you they met this week, they met last week. They're still trying to figure something out. In all 3 of those other alternatives, which are the cooperative ones, our state and the other upper basin states have said, look, we'll put a voluntary conservation program on the table because we need to conserve water. We need an agreement. And what we need out of the lower basin is a waiver of claims about the compact. about our alleged delivery obligation, or as our state calls it, a non-depletion obligation at just below the Glen Canyon Dam. So we say, hey, we need that waiver. And they say, that's great, but you got to conserve water. And they say, well, right now we're stuck on the fact that they want it, Arizona wants it to be mandatory. They want us to have our state engineer turning off head gates without any compensation, no matter what, and producing water at our state line. Our state correctly says it's illegal. We can't do that under not only our state law, but our state constitution gives water users the right to appropriate the waters of the state of Colorado. We can't do that unless there's a compact curtailment that goes, and this, sorry to get wonky about this, but there's something called the Upper Colorado River Commission. It's all 4 upper basin states and the federal government, and we each have a representative on it. If that commission says we have defaulted under our obligation under the 1922 compact, here's an order of curtailment, and they assess how much each state owes to be curtailed. They will give a number to Jason Ullman, our state engineer, say it's 1 million acre feet that the state of Colorado owes. Then, and only then, can our state engineer curtail water for delivery out of state on the Colorado River. There's no other time our state engineer has that authority. And our state engineer can only do that because we signed a compact and approved it as law to allow it to happen. So that's not going to happen unless the Supreme Court tells the UCRC, the Upper Colorado River Commission, to do it. They're dead set against finding that we're in violation, which means we can't do the mandatory, and we shouldn't. So how do we do it? Well, there's been this system conservation pilot program, other ways, water marketing schemes to try to see if we can pay farmers and ranchers to reduce their consumptive use and produce it for the river. We don't like that at the River District. Our board has struggled with it for a long time. The idea of the economic, impacts could be really, if done wrong, could be huge, right? Frankly, all 4 corners of our state rely upon Colorado River water, and yet all of these programs have been designed and implemented in a way that takes water out of Western Colorado only and dries up Western Colorado agriculture. So we've come up with a list of principles and ideas, and even we did a bunch of work on a marketplace structure and things. None of it's perfect, right? We're trying to get it into a place where it is designed to protect our communities, and yet also recognize that there are farmers and ranchers who could use an extra tool once in a while to monetize their water rights so they can get some money to pay some debt or get their kid through school or whatever it is that they choose to do with their money. So developing a tool, but not, so allowing on an individual level, some participation, but at the same time protecting the agricultural industry and the communities that rely upon it within Western Colorado. So it's a tricky balance, right? We've got a lot of thought into it, a lot of ideas, a lot of structures. We're trying to get a consensus in the Western Slope among both agriculture and community leaders to try to hit that balance. But the key is it's going to require state legislation to make sure we're protected. We don't want that legislation going through this year. We're not ready for it. There have been some speculators, primarily located down in the Gunnison, that have been pushing for legislation this year without any of the sideboards. In fact, a draft of their thing that their legislation that we saw specifically said no local control, said no ditch company control. It said the state runs it. That makes us uncomfortable, to say the least.
Who's pushing that in Gunnison?
In the Gunnison, it's a organization called Conscience Bay. They also operate under the name of Western States Ranches. They have an investor out of Long Island who would like a return on his investment. We're not, again, just to be clear, we're not opposed to a properly constructed guided market that is protecting our farms and ranches in our communities. What sometimes we in those discussions get accused of is, hey, you guys are against capitalism. And I will just say a marketplace that's set up with federal tax dollars that's set up to meet a collective government obligation. That's the Upper Basin's obligation on the compact, and is implemented by the government, is not a free market under anybody's definition of free market. So it is something that is a policy, a public policy being implemented by the feds or by our state or a combination of them, that can potentially devastate our local communities. And we need that public policy to be done right, to protect our communities, not to protect Arizona's ability to attract yet another chip plant, right? I'm not interested in seeing the Yampa Valley dried up so that they can continue to build subdivisions down there. That's just not where we need to go. And so we've got to be really careful and find that balance. And I won't tell you here today that we found the balance. So I'm not, but what we're trying to get the consensus, and it takes a while to do that. We're working with the Colorado Cattlemen's Association, the Farm Bureau, working with the Rocky Mountain Farmers Union. We're trying to figure out that balance. And I think we're making progress, but it does take some time. I'm sure I've left a lot out.
Let me just add a little color commentary on the last part. The conserved consumptive use program, demand management, system conservation, it goes by a number of different names, but ultimately they all are programs that would pay irrigators not to irrigate in order to send that water downstream to Powell. That is not on because the 7 states have failed to reach an agreement. That's not on the table right now. But we do know from Colorado's negotiators that if a deal is reached, that will be one of the core tenets of their proposal. And so we've got a little bit of time right now to continue to have these conversations and try to structure a potential program in a way that protects our ag communities on the Western Slope. But as Andy said, if done wrong, it could have devastating impacts. And I've talked to you all about this before. It's not just limited to the producer. If you're paying to fallow land, those secondary economic impacts that impact the co-op, the seed store, the insurance agent on Main Street, and a lot of our smaller ag-focused communities would be negatively impacted, to say the least. We have, I think, and maybe this is a good segue to some of the work that I do at the River District, and I wasn't planning to go here, but I will. I work to maintain a regular presence at the state capitol each and every legislative session. I try to keep you all in the loop through my biweekly legislative updates. You should be receiving those emails with any bills that we're considering. But a part of my focus and the focus of the district right now is keeping eyes and ears down there so that we can know what threats are coming. We know that the Front Range would like to develop a conserved consumptive use program that solely relies, as Andy alluded to, relies solely on West Slope participation. We know that, we've got speculators and others that are having these conversations in the hallways of the Capitol. It's our job to be there, to be present, and to make sure that West Slope legislators, regardless of party, are standing together. And I think that's one thing we're very lucky to have, is a group of Republicans and Democrats from the West Slope that when it comes to water, they stick together. Dylan Roberts has been a big champion of ours and working to protect us in these conversations and others. Matt Soper and Janice Rich from Mesa County have been great as well, Mesa and Delta. So I want to wrap up that part just by saying the board at the River District does meet on a biweekly basis to inform me and staff what positions we are going to take on legislation. You all are also always welcome on those calls. You should receive the Zoom invite or my legislative update. I think our board's decisions, and I don't mean to speak for Tom, but I think our board's decisions and the River District's positions are improved when we have the input of our commissioners and our partners on the Western Slope on legislation that is important to them. So with that being said, at our last meeting, last Thursday, we did discuss our draft EIS comments. I then turned around and worked with staff to provide you all some written templates for potential comments to the Bureau. And I know that is next on your agenda. So why don't I shut up for a second and ask if you have any questions and if we can be helpful there.
Ooh, that was a lot.
Sorry, that's my fault.
What's,
Yes.
just that organization you was talking about, the Western State Ranches, is
Yes.
that what you said?
Yes.
Now, what's their agenda or?
Well, you know,
We've seen this time and time again on the Western Slope. In my tenure at the River District, it's been a small handful of operators, usually backed by out-of-state hedge funds or billionaires
Yeah.
that are acquiring ag land primarily for the senior water rights that underlie it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these folks realize it's pretty hard to make a lot of money in ag these days. And so if the most valuable part of your acquisition is the water, you're going to try to monetize
That's
the
what I thought it was.
monetize the
Yeah.
non-use of
Sure,
that.
that's what I.
they're targeting really high quality senior water rights in the Gunnison, and they're buying specific ranches to do that, and they're doing it without any debt. That's of record anyway, and they've got some patient money. I mean, and I think the key is that we've seen this in the Grand Valley with Water Asset Management, a hedge fund out of New York City as well. They are, it's the discussion of these marketplaces that have been going on in the interstate level that have raised their attention, and they have started looking at this investment as a long-term play. And if this market is set up with as few as rules as they would like, they want to cash in, and they don't care about the long-term longevity of the community. And I can tell you, in our state, you can look at Crowley County for something that happens to a county that gets dried up and the water gets exported to somewhere else. Our water out of the Yampa wouldn't be physically exported to Colorado Springs and Aurora like it did in Crowley County. It would be exported downstream for the benefit of the lower basin, right? And there would be all sorts of reasons that people would say it's going to benefit. It just wouldn't benefit here, right? And we went down and looked with our board at Palo Verde Irrigation District. It's in Blythe, California, right on the Arizona border, right on the river, the most senior water right in the lower basin. They entered into an agreement to fallow up to almost 30% of their land with Metropolitan Water of Southern California, the domestic water provider for that huge megalopolis down there. And there are some real winners. Some ranchers that when we drove down there to meet, we met two factions. Met the guys who made a lot of money, and they pulled up in their Cadillac Escalade pickups, and they were really proud of what they had done in making money. And individually, they'd really done great. Then we met with a remaining farmer who happened to sit on the city council, and he couldn't get labor. The hardware store, the co-op, the feed supply had all closed. When I looked to go talk to people down there, I thought, I'll look at the Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber of Commerce didn't have a single local hardware store or supply store or anything as a member. And I said, well, this has got to be wrong. I called City Hall, literally, like cold called the city manager. She said, oh yeah, they're all out of business. We don't have any local businesses, And so we met with them, and the difference in viewpoint and the difference in the way that community their biggest economic development that they had with the money they got from Met was a Subway restaurant. These are people who used to make good money farming and ranching, and they just, and this is huge production agriculture in that valley. We're not talking, this is, they had money coming into that community, and it's gone. So we don't want to see that happen in Western Colorado. That should be all of our shared vision as to how we protect that. And that's where we're coming from on these discussions.
Any questions, Tony?
Nope.
Like Donald said, that's a lot. I
Yeah.
appreciate you coming and sharing that with us. And
And if you, as you think about it, if there's anything that we can break down, talk about again, just have conversations with, because I'm my job and our job is to make sure that we're doing the right thing for our communities. But in order to do that, we need to understand the community's goals and needs. And if we're wrong on our basic assumptions, we are more than open to being informed otherwise. So we I think take our job seriously and understand the need to advocate for the protection of our communities. So.
Well, I think the three of us really appreciate what you guys do. And then we really, really appreciate Mr. Gray over there, what he does for this county.
Yeah, as do we, and want to appreciate you reappointing him despite his protests. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah. You can only spend so much time in Mexico. You must.
I know. I was kind of surprised when we set this up in February that he was here.
In the news yesterday, I was kind of, well, I was.
Right.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll say before I jump off is to bring this full circle. Our community funding partnership was built to be flexible, nimble. We can move on a dime. We do have resources available for the Yampa, and so we're looking for more projects. I think Maybell has been a great partner of ours in Moffett County, but to the extent you have constituents, water users that are in need, maybe it's just a headgate being replaced. Maybe it's it's an irrigation company that needs some help improving and upgrading their entire system. Please, to the extent that you're aware of constituents that need help, send them our way. We've got money that we want to put out into projects. So,
And yeah, one other thing just to mention is, unfortunately this year it doesn't look like Elkhead is like Bill. It's a rare year where that happens.
Right.
So if we keep on this track, we're normally worried about managing the spill of Elkhead, and we're very concerned. Got a reservoir operator on our end who tracks this stuff, and I swear he's losing hair by the day trying to figure out how to keep these reservoirs full and able to do their job. So hydrology, again, need us to tell you that it's horrendous.
Mhm.
So,
we'll stick around for the
the
next
conversation. Happy to help out in any way.
Much appreciated.
Great.
Yeah, thank you all.
Yeah. All right, Will and Jeff, I assume, land use.
Thank you, Commissioners. Zane and Andy did a great job of a segue into this letter that we're going to introduce. Basically, Tom and some people on the land use board prepared this letter in regard to what they were talking about, the post 2026 operational guidelines, where we have an opportunity to make a comment about these 5 alternatives that are proposed. And as you can see, it's a fairly concerning issue. So this letter basically is put out there as a template that they put together with some of Moffett County's unique viewpoints on there to hopefully go on record is these are our concerns, and they're very valid concerns. I will say we're very fortunate to have you three as board members, because you're in tune with agricultural, you're involved with agriculture, and this really affects all of us here, as we've seen with kind of being impacted by incomplete environmental assessments in terms of socioeconomic issues with, getting out of transitioning out of fossil fuels. So when this affects our other part of our economy, it's pretty important. So Jeff, do you have anything to?
I might just add, just to give credit, there was the land use board, when Will brought this up at the last meeting, there was Doug Davis, Steve Hinkemeyer, Mike Camblin, Will, and then we recruited our River District rep to participate in adding comments. We based the template is the River Districts. The template that you see up there is the comments they wrote. There was nothing we disagreed with. We didn't delete anything that the River District had, but we added 3 new points, and they're bolded and highlighted in in the letter. And one of the points basically says that we want one of the alternatives to consider, and it may be outside the scope of what they're looking at, but we want to get the discussion going about desalinization on the West Coast. Would like them to at least analyze an opportunity for some West Coast cities to be supplied water by cleaning up ocean water and not drawing it out of Powell. One way to, we want that at least considered. Another thing we've added in there is that when Andy and Zane talked about leasing in the Yampa River or leasing in the Upper Basin state agriculture, we know the Yampa River is going to be a target for that. And we put a criteria in there that says no ag lease should be over, should not be 3 years in a 10-year period, and no acre should be leased 2 years in a row. And so it's a concept of keeping agriculture as productive as possible while allowing minimal leasing. And then the third concept we put in there is that there should be some consideration for natural hydrology. If the water's not there like it is this year, we shouldn't be delivering water to the lower basin states. That the upper basin should have a credit for drought that happens for reduced water. So those are the three before they're delivered. Before we split water half and half, we've already taken our hit when that water's not there. So we've added those three concepts in based on the people I just mentioned talking about this letter. Well, that's maybe the only highlight I'd add.
Yeah, no, that's pretty critical, Jeff. Just to kind of recap is one, getting credit for natural conservation. Two, sideboards on how we would conserve. And then three, the desalination. So those are the three basic additions.
And I think we know that some of those may not be able to be considered in the EIS, but we wanted to bring them up and make them public and start talking about them as issues that need to get discussed in these larger water discussions. So I think that's, if the letter in front of you is kind of the suggestions from your committee off of the land use board.
Any further questions for Will or Jeff?
Makes sense to me.
We'll entertain a motion.
Chair, I would make a motion to I guess adopt, is that what you want?
Yeah. Yep. Adopt the letter and send it off to the Bureau of Reclamation.
So adopt the letter and send it off to the Bureau of Reclamation regarding the post 2026 operational guidelines and strategies for Lake Powell and Lake Mead.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Thanks for your work on this,
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
board and to Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And with that, we will adjourn and meet again on Tuesday, March 10th.
Thank you.